Sometimes, when you're reflecting on your actions and reactions, you might catch yourself thinking, "Am I really repeating the same patterns my parents had?" This internal thought often appears unexpectedly, almost as a subconscious hint, and can evoke feelings of surprise or even anxiety. After all, a person usually strives to forge their own path, avoid past mistakes, and not become a mere copy of those who raised them. Initially, this may seem like the only way to affirm oneself, to fight against the inner sense that the habits and reactions you've acquired aren't entirely your own, but rather family patterns. However, as you grow older, the more clearly you begin to notice that certain habits, mannerisms, intonations, or even ways of speaking start to resemble those your parents or close relatives once exhibited. Suddenly, you realize that despite your desire to stand out and build your own life, these subconscious repetitions are becoming more apparent and harder to ignore. This creates conflicting feelings inside. On one hand, you recognize that thanks to your parents, you received important life lessons and valuable experiences. On the other hand, there's a part of their behavior that you dearly want to avoid inheriting. This inner conflict generates tension. You feel grateful for all the good things your parents provided, yet at the same time, worry that some of their traits are showing up in you as well. Such a mental discord is the source of constant unease. You wouldn't want to succumb to the same fate and become just like those you initially sought to distance yourself from. And then the question arises. What if you involuntarily start noticing similarities between yourself and your parents' behavior? Would this be unavoidable? Or are there ways to recognize these automatic patterns and adjust them, preserving your independence and individuality? These reflections often form the foundation of an ongoing inner struggle, a quest for harmony between the past and the present. The fear of gradually becoming like one's parents or parental figures doesn't appear out of nowhere. It develops over many years, becoming deeply ingrained in the subconscious through memories, entrenched habits, and even through how you perceive yourself. To understand the root of this inner fear, it's important to explore several key reasons that originated in childhood and continue to influence you even in adulthood. The first significant factor is the set of parental beliefs and strict rules that shape your worldview. From a young age, you grew up in an environment where phrases like "that's the right way," "we've always done it this way," or "this is how it's done in our family" were constantly echoed. These words formed an invisible framework, a kind of internal map of guiding principles that you had to follow. These beliefs unwittingly became the foundation of your convictions and behaviors. Even if you inwardly protested against them and dreamed of doing things differently, these parental directives acted like internal constraints. They created a feeling that any deviation from these family rules was almost a transgression, something that could lead to losing support or becoming an outsider. As you grew older, you noticed that these thoughts and beliefs continued to govern your actions, often playing silently in the back of your mind when making important decisions, sometimes unconsciously hindering your confidence to move forward. Some of these rules may be quite beneficial, for example, principles like honesty, responsibility, or diligence. They help an individual mature and build a stable life. However, others transform into heavy anchors that pull you backward, making you doubt your abilities or unnecessarily holding you back from achieving your goals. In this way, the internal program rooted in your parents' teachings turns into both a support and a barrier at the same time. Another important mechanism in this process is automatic repetition of behavior. Our brains are wired to copy the models of behavior observed around us, especially those from childhood. You probably watched how your father would get annoyed when things didn't go as planned, or how your mother would worry about every little thing. Even if you swore you would never behave that way, your brain stored these models as ready-made scenarios, easily applicable in future situations. This is part of an evolutionary survival mechanism. The mind learns habitual reactions to save energy and time when faced with stressful situations. Such automatism allows quick responses without the need for conscious deliberation. That's why sometimes you catch yourself reacting exactly like your parents or close relatives, even if your conscious mind strongly opposes it. These behavior patterns are deeply embedded in the subconscious, and changing them requires conscious effort, since automated responses are difficult to override without deliberate practice. If conflicts, shouting, indifference, or pressure were common in your family environment, these memories leave an indelible mark on your subconscious. For a child, such situations are perceived as especially sharp and intense because, at an early age, they are extremely vulnerable and lack the means to protect themselves or fully understand what is happening. These experiences shape internal beliefs and patterns that can influence both your conscious mind and subconscious for many years to come. These scenes or episodes become, in your psyche, a kind of forbidden signals, associated with powerful emotional states such as fear, resentment, helplessness, and despair. Later, when you notice reactions in yourself that resemble those from childhood, it's as if you're being pulled back to that feeling of pain and suffering. Anxiety intensifies exponentially because this isn't just a matter of habit or psychological baggage. It appears as evidence that the internal tension or negative memories are still alive and relevant, as if you haven't fully escaped from the past. Fear of repeating the same fate. Perhaps your parents didn't achieve the goals and dreams they aspired to. Maybe their lives didn't turn out as they hoped, or they didn't find joy either in their personal lives or careers. Inside, a deep belief may have taken hold that if you start to resemble them, behave like they did, or repeat their mistakes, you risk repeating their fate. This inner fear operates on a subconscious level. The perceived similarity isn't just a superficial trait or habit, but a warning sign of inevitable repetition of the past, a symbol that you might be destined to follow the same path. This seems to me one of the strongest and most unresolvable barriers inside because it's perceived as a danger signal. Even if, objectively, the resemblance is merely a characteristic, like a particular way of speaking or a behavioral quirk, in your mind, it transforms into an assertion of your future. These similar traits are seen as predictions of what's to come, a chance to repeat old mistakes or follow the same life script, which isn't necessarily true. Comparison and internal observation over time. As you grow older, you begin to notice more and more small similarities within yourself. Subtle gestures, intonations, facial expressions, nuances that you may have previously overlooked or dismissed. Sometimes they appear unexpectedly, for example, when you see your reflection or hear a recording of your voice. These small details can cause significant discomfort because automatic associations are triggered. They become just like them. Sometimes, the feeling of losing your individuality or uniqueness becomes very intense. Even if it's only about a manner of laughing, walking, or facial expressions, an inner sense emerges that you are losing yourself, your sense of identity. Comparing yourself to your parents feels like viewing yourself through a distorted mirror. Instead of recognizing your unique personality, you begin to see yourself through the prism of their traits and behaviors. This internal mechanic often prevents you from feeling complete and whole because you start perceiving yourself as merely an echo or reflection of their characteristics rather than an independent individual. If in your childhood you experienced feelings of hurt due to criticism, strictness from adults, lack of warmth, or understanding from close ones, then any thought of beginning to behave similarly to your parents, or those who raised you, can be perceived as painful and distressing. These associations evoke discomfort because it seems as if you are betraying your true self, which essentially amounts to betraying yourself. This feeling is akin to siding with those who once caused you pain or losing vital parts of your individuality, as you try not to repeat their mistakes. Therefore, even minor manifestations of resemblance to your parents, such as speaking style, gestures, habits, or reactions, often provoke a strong emotional response, sometimes even stronger than routine habits or usual behaviors. Inside, feelings of anger at yourself or guilt arise because it seems that you're betraying yourself to preserve an image or to avoid repeating past errors. The most challenging part is often the fear of losing your fidelity to yourself, since this anxiety can lead to constant doubts and inner conflicts, making it difficult for you to live and grow fully. This fear can become a source of internal tension and anxiety that interferes with your ability to live authentically and develop freely. How to deal with it? The fear of being similar to your parents and repeating their mistakes may seem very heavy, almost an insurmountable barrier. Sometimes it appears so powerful that any effort to change yourself or break free from old scripts seems almost impossible. However, in reality, you have much more freedom than you realize initially. The key is awareness and taking small, consistent steps toward rewriting old patterns and freeing yourself from the feeling that you are merely an inheritance of the past. It's important to understand that you can not only become aware of the problem but also actively work on yourself. Change reactions, form new habits, and develop different ways of responding to situations that once caused anxiety or discomfort. Divide the I and they. One of the most effective ways to start working on yourself is through an exercise that involves dividing your personality into two parts. Take a blank sheet of paper and make two lists. In the first list, write down all the qualities, habits, reactions, or traits you have inherited from your parents or other influential adults, and which you genuinely like or find useful. In the second, list those traits and behaviors you want to get rid of because you consider them harmful or negative. This exercise helps you see clearly that you are not just a carbon copy but an independent person capable of making choices. Sometimes it's also helpful to add a third column, what I lacked. In this column, you can list qualities, traits, or situations that you didn't have in childhood or in your relationships with your parents, but would like to develop now. For example, confidence, patience, warmth, or the ability to express your feelings. This analysis helps you understand that you can take what you didn't have before and compensate for internal gaps. As a result, you start perceiving yourself as a separate and autonomous individual, not dependent on the inheritance or scripts of your parents. You choose your own life, reactions, and path, which significantly frees you and gives a sense of independence and wholeness. Parents are not ideals and not antiheroes. They are ordinary people who lived the way they could, based on their experiences, upbringing, and circumstances. They also had their fears, traumas, and limitations. Recognizing this helps you see them as human beings with flaws rather than perfect figures. It's important to understand that their actions or mistakes do not define your worth or your destiny. They did what they could at the time, and their path was shaped by their own struggles and challenges. When you stop perceiving them as ultimate standards or authorities and instead see them as ordinary individuals with their own weaknesses, it significantly alleviates your inner burden. This perspective allows you to let go of the feeling of fatality, that their mistakes are your fate. Realizing that their errors are part of their journey, not your own, gives you the freedom to forge your unique life path, based on your values and choices. It helps you stop blaming yourself for picking up habits or reactions similar to theirs, recognizing that these are part of the process of growth. Consequently, you gain the opportunity to free yourself from the heavy emotional load linked to past expectations and associations. Catch your automatic reactions. One of the most important tools for self-awareness is noticing your automatic responses, especially those that mimic parental behavior. For example, if you find yourself yelling, withdrawing, or criticizing someone, pause for a moment and ask yourself, do I really want to act this way? Or is this my authentic reaction? Or am I just following a habit? This simple but powerful exercise helps you become aware of the moment when your autopilot takes over, and it empowers you to choose a more intentional response. Initially, it may be challenging because habits tend to trigger reactions quickly and unconsciously. Responding on autopilot is easier, but with practice, you'll start catching these moments and replacing them with conscious choices. Each time you do so, you reinforce a new pattern and weaken the old scripts. Over time, you'll notice greater control over your reactions and more deliberate behavior. Create opposite habits. If your father often withdrew into himself, begin learning to express your feelings, even if it's in small steps. If your mother was prone to anxiety over everything, work on building trust in yourself and others, developing flexibility in uncertain situations. Each new action is like laying a brick in the foundation of your new self. You are essentially creating an alternative version of yourself, someone who chooses to live differently, consciously, and freely. Even if these changes feel unfamiliar or somewhat uncomfortable, that is exactly where growth happens. As these new habits develop, they become natural parts of your life, no longer requiring effort. This process helps you establish internal stability, allowing you to stay true to yourself in any situation, without reverting to old patterns. This gradual transformation leads to a sense of inner strength and confidence, giving you control over your reactions and the ability to choose how to act in each moment. Remember, every small step brings you closer to becoming a more mature, harmonious, and free individual. Certain gestures, mannerisms, or personality traits will inevitably remain with you, and that is completely normal. It's part of who you are. You might have your father's hands, strong and decisive, your mother's smile, warm and sincere, or even the same facial expressions. It's important to understand that possessing these similarities is not a betrayal of yourself or an indication that you are losing your individuality. It's part of your story, your inheritance, which you received from your parents. Similarity doesn't make you a copy of them if you consciously choose your own path and define your personal identity. You can perceive these traits as part of your heritage, as natural expressions of your unique personality, and at the same time find a balance between inheritance and self-identity. Ultimately, these traits are not accusations or limitations but rather sources of strength and resources. Along with external characteristics and habits, you have inherited internal resources. Resilience, perseverance, the ability to overcome difficulties, passion for life, everything that helped your parents cope with life's challenges. Stop punishing yourself. Many people begin to blame themselves for displaying these parental traits. They feel guilt, suppress their reactions, or hide their feelings, fearing that it is wrong or inappropriate. But it's crucial to realize that simply noticing these traits and thinking about them indicates your awareness. You begin to understand what is happening and have the opportunity to change your attitude towards yourself and your mindset. This is a significant step forward. You are not automatically becoming a parent just because you resemble them in some ways. Understand that your traits are part of your history, not a prison cell. You always have the choice. Pause, reflect, and choose a different behavior, reaction, or attitude. Awareness is the foundation of change. It gives you the strength not to judge yourself but to accept and grow. Punishing yourself for similarities only reinforces fear and hinders growth. Instead, focus on self-acceptance. Understand your feelings about the past. This is the key to wisdom. Accepting your traits and past with kindness and patience creates conditions for inner harmony and peace. Work with past wounds. If memories of childhood feel too painful, filled with anger, resentment, or emptiness, it's very important to acknowledge these feelings and approach them seriously. In such cases, it's highly recommended to consult a psychologist or an emotional work specialist. Sometimes, the fear of becoming like or repeating your parents' fate is hidden behind unresolved inner wounds still living inside you, influencing your reactions and beliefs. Working through these wounds is a crucial step on the path to inner freedom. It helps you see the past more calmly and accept it as part of your story, not as a verdict. The more you understand and accept your emotional scars, the less their influence on your current life. This allows you to stop viewing yourself through the lens of pain, resentment, and fear. When the burden of old emotions becomes easier to carry, the fear of being similar to your parents loses its power and significance. You start seeing yourself not as a continuation of their fate or as replaying their mistakes but as an independent, complete person with the power to choose your own path. As a result, inner acceptance and healing from the past enable you to become free and move forward with peace and confidence in yourself.